I'm ready, baby. Bring it. It's weird not being able to hear it because we can always hear the music. Ready, Brown? 357 Productions is proud to present an episode of Darkness to Light, one of our interview episodes. And today we are very pleased to have with us Miss Christine McKinley, who is a real live rock star. We would like to say that we do not own any of the music that's used in this program, but we sure do like it. We would like also to point out that all of the opinions expressed in this program are mine and Christine's alone, and they do not represent the Grand Lodge of North Carolina, Sophia Lodge, or any other Masonic body that I belong to, or anything that Christine belongs to, right?
Fair enough.
Just ours.
Just us.
So obviously this is a little bit different look than we usually have at 357 Productions. We're normally in the tractor shed, and we're normally wearing jeans and t-shirts and stuff, and you can tell we call spiffy and dressed up today. The reason for that is we had a little scheduling conflict, and it was necessary for us to come to Salisbury and shoot prior to a Sophia meeting. So we're all dressed up here in about an hour and a half. We're gonna move into our traditional Observant Lodge meeting. Christine's going to be our speaker, and we're thrilled to have her. And like always, any opportunity to grab one of our national level speakers and do an interview with them, we do it. So Christine,
Great.
Welcome to 357 Productions.
Thank
interview.
you so much.
So how do you find North Carolina?
Lovely, really lovely. I visited a Waffle House on the way here, and now I understand what a Waffle House is really supposed to be.
Yeah.
It was very friendly, almost unnervingly so.
I was telling Christine that what she ought to do is visit it on the way back to where she's staying the night, which will be about midnight,
Yeah.
and you'll get a much different experience. If you want to really get the whole ambiance and flavor of the Waffle House, you got to go late at night after all the bars close.
If one of you will escort me, then I will go, but I'm not going alone.
Yeah, I think there's one here in this town. Surely they got a Waffle House in this town, don't they, Brown? We're going to take that thing over.
We just made plans, didn't we?
That's right. That's right. So I said Christine was a rock star, and we use that term a lot on our show. I don't know how we started that. I guess maybe Beeman started that, or I'm not sure where that came from. We used to call Rob Hurd the rock star, but he's not anymore because we've got Christine. And actually, she really is a real live rock star. She wrote this book, and if you can see in here, there's a picture of a lady playing a guitar on here, and I'm assuming that's like a caricature of you.
Well, she's a little better looking than I am, but I had my illustrator, I said, do someone like me, but younger and hotter, and so that's what he came up with.
Well, just a little stick figure person is, I don't know if that fits the bill or not. But so tell us about, let's talk about music just a little bit
Okay.
before we get into the book and the rest of the good stuff. Just tell us about playing music. What exactly do you do, and do you have a band?
Yeah, I play music with two of my best women friends. We're in a band we've called Swan Sovereign. And I play bass, Stephanie plays drum, Laura plays guitar. We all started playing guitar. We were in a band together. We had two men. We had a drummer and a bass player who were guys. And eventually we decided it was just more fun with the three of us. Though we loved the men we were playing with, the three of us really have this 12-year friendship and chemistry that is just kind of undeniable. So I went back to playing bass, which I started on. And so now we've got bass, drums, and guitar, and we all sing, and it is so much fun. We just recorded a song, and we're going to record more in April.
So before you get big and famous, we have a problem with YouTube.
Oh, it's too late. I'm already big and famous.
Oh no! You're right. Before you get famous in the music world,
okay.
YouTube, we used to use different lead-in music and stuff, and they got mad at us, and they wouldn't let it. I mean, they weren't mad at us; they just wouldn't play it because even though we use a disclaimer sometimes, I don't know.
Oh, you can use ours.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Would you do us like a lead-in and lead-out music?
Oh,
We use
totally.
You couldn't hear it, but we use Metallica. Oh no! Oh, well, we use
a
an
band.
Italian band
Yeah.
that sounds remarkably like Metallica,
Right.
who we really love. Lars will be on the phone here in just a minute.
We'll send you some music to use because most of our themes are about Swan Sovereign. It's about being free and being independent and being independent thinkers. And when three women say that, it's perceived as a certain thing, but we really mean it for all of humanity.
Oh, I love
so we
that.
have one song just called "You Work for Me." That's really funny. That's really just sort of saying, you might think that I work for you, but no, dear, you work for me. You would love it as a lead-in.
I do love that. Hey, man, you send it and we'll use it.
Okay, great.
Hey, anytime we can scarf up some free stuff, that's what we're all about, right, Brown?
Great.
I love that. So do you just play around the local area where you're from?
Yeah, in Portland, we have all been in bands that have toured nationally.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I was David Crosby's opener for a little while.
Out of here.
Yes.
You have got to be kidding.
I know, I was. Yeah. With my band, McKinley, just myself. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, it was interesting. It really teaches you how to, especially opening for a national act, it teaches you how to earn respect rather than just be given it. And as a woman engineer, I'm used to that. Of course, you have to earn the respect. So I would walk onto the stage and nobody would care about me at all. And I would have to earn it by, speaking to them between songs and being really good and delivering something with confidence. And sometimes I'd win them over and sometimes I wouldn't.
So did you think about making that a career?
Yeah, I was signed to a label.
Because there's like almost as much money as
Right.
mechanical engineer, right?
The weird truth is I enjoy being an engineer more than I enjoyed being a musician.
Really?
As a career, yeah. It's more
Money.
I know. I hate to. Musicians will hate to hear me say this, but I just like being necessary. I like working on hospitals and semiconductor fabs and schools and doing something that is crucial to humanity. There's something about that is so exciting. And I do believe that music and art is crucial to our humanity.
Yeah.
But there is something about, creating a $700 million semiconductor fab from a pit of mud that is just exhilarating to me.
I bet it is.
It is. It really is. To be affecting that much change that quickly.
So when you read the book, you talk an awful lot about your love of engineering that kind of took a little while to blossom, and so there's some really cool parts of this book. Let's just dive into the book.
Sure.
I had a few things I was going to talk about before I got to the book, but we'll circle back around
Okay.
to them. How about that?
All right.
This book is called Physics for Rock Stars. You can pick it up, I'm sure, through Amazon.
Yep.
It's where I got my copies.
Yeah, Barnes & Noble, Powell's, yep.
Right. And so here's some of the things that I liked about the book, and the one thing I didn't like. I didn't like the math and science because it's just hard for me, right?
Right.
I'm just not one of those
Well,
people
'cause
that are
you're a
wired
guy.
that way. Yeah, and I'm not real smart.
Kidding.
Math and science just isn't the way that I go. So the math and science part, which is a very small part of the book,
Yeah.
you kind of made it easy.
I tried to, yeah.
Yeah, and dumb it down.
Well,
I'm sure you wouldn't say dumb it down.
No, not at
I
all.
perceived it as getting down on my level, making it more,
Right.
easy for me to understand some of the physics stuff. But it's not. I mean, it's not like really heavy lifting as
Right,
far as. I
yeah.
mean, this is kind of an introductory, book to that. But, so here's the way you wrote the
in fairness
chapters.
to you, there's no way to really make, the laws of the universe super simple. There's certainly the laws of energy that takes a little bit of turning them over in your head. So you're not, don't think you're not good at math and science if this didn't come easily to you. It just probably takes a second or third read.
Know thyself is the first great proverb, and I'm not good at math or science.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
it's not for lack of trying. Okay, so let me read this. Cool kids. You're talking about being in school, and it says that cool kids were on the very top and smart kids were near the bottom. I wasn't sure which genus I belonged to, and you're talking here about just the idea of somehow with kids and really with our society. This bugs me, Christine. Even though I'm bad at math and science, there's a perception in our country that is growing more and more prevalent that somehow being smart is not cool.
Right.
And you kind of understand that and expect that in teenagers.
Right.
But it's almost becoming prevalent in the grown-up world too,
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's kind of scary.
Yeah.
That's not cool.
Yeah. And it's not good for our country.
not
if
good
we're
for our
thinking
country.
that. I think one of the most patriotic things you can do is be a good engineer or a good teacher or a smart American. Are we just going to import our talent?
Right. So how are we going to fix that?
Well, I'm trying to fix it in my own small way and say, 19% of engineers are women. Who are we leaving? Are there some young women that maybe didn't get the memo that they could be engineers? Are we leaving some talent behind? And same with young men. Are we leaving talent behind by letting them think this is not a very fun career or not a very cool career? Because I can tell you, out on a construction site, when you're running around like mad trying to figure out a change order and it has to be done in an hour, that is some exciting stuff. And it is really cool, and it makes good money.
Are the engineering schools full?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. I know that I started my business just less than a year ago, and I'm not the best mechanical engineer in Portland, Oregon, where I live. I know that to be true, but there's such a high demand that I have more work than I can handle right now.
Yeah,
I don't want my clients to hear that. I have just as much work as I can handle. I'm doing fine. Yeah, and the economy's going crazy.
The economy's
and
good.
I have talked to so many people who've said, I will hire a Romulan if it walks through the door and can do any engineering. So there are plenty of jobs, good jobs where you can move from city to city. You can take time off if you have a child. There are jobs for everybody.
Right. Well, I'm glad you became an engineer.
I am too. I'm just trying to make my dad proud.
Well, I kind of, when I finished your book, I was proud of you.
Oh, thank you.
I just thought it was really cool
Yeah.
that, it was really cool listening to the whole emotions that you went through of kind of mixing in how hard it is just to be a teenager.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody was a
Right.
teenager at one time and went
Yeah.
through different trials and tribulations, but you kind of explain them. And then, talk about how in the end, you became an engineer and a rock star, and it's just, I don't know, it's a feel-good American success story is what I thought it was.
Thank you. That's funny. It's funny to see it that way because, nobody's story is really that simple. Of course, if you were to follow me around for a week, you'd think, man, what a mess. There are certainly things that I do that you might not think define a successful person.
Oh, do
but
tell us what they all are.
I might
We-
drink.
we've all got
I
that,
might drink
right?
a little much now and then. Yeah.
Oh, we're going to do that later. That's after the meeting.
Oh, thank goodness.
All right, so here's the thing I really loved about this book. This is my favorite part. So what you do is in each chapter, you kind of take a subject and you start off and you tell a story. And it's a story about your life. Mm-hmm. And it kind of relates to the chapter. And then you talk about a little bit of science. And then near the end, you give a moral lesson. What do you call
Yeah.
that section? That's the moral lesson section.
Physics for your life?
Yeah, physics for your
Because we
life.
really toss that idea around with the publisher at Penguin. How do we work that in without it being too hokey? But they're really, those last little expansive thoughts in each chapter are really sort of where I live in physics.
Right, and I love that. I love that you can relate it. You make it personal to the reader, and that's always, by opening up and telling a vulnerable story about yourself, a bad experience that you had or a good experience that you had, that really drives home a lesson, and it makes it personal. Even though if just by making it personal, it becomes my story, even though it's not
Right.
about me. Does that make sense?
Oh, it totally makes sense. Yeah, and it's the highest compliment. Thank you.
And I love that about the book. Let me read you this.
I love that you've defined yourself as, I know you're a man, you're not math and science oriented, and yet you found yourself, relating to a book written by a woman who's a nerd.
Yeah.
And that's a great compliment.
Here's my favorite chapter in the book.
Okay.
And this is where you're talking about, this part where you're telling a lesson. Took me a while to discern the bad chaos from the good chaos, but I can smell the difference between them now. Dangerous, unproductive chaos smells like a plastic sofa getting burned by an unwatched cigarette. Good chaos smells like a beach thunderstorm drowning out a driftwood fire. They're similar smoky aromas, but they each have their own distinct bouquet. With practice, you can smell the difference a mile away. One is dark and greasy, and the other is clean and steamy. I love that, and I love your
Thank
writing
you.
style. It's good.
Thank you
It's
so
all
much.
good.
I wrote that on a construction site at Intel. I was helping build a semiconductor fab, and I had just a moment of, I know how I need to describe that. I remember just scribbling that in a little piece of paper while I was in my muddy boots and hard hat, and sort of tucking it in a pocket somewhere and taking it home and typing it.
It's very good. So you can take something like physics and you can make it fun for people to read. The whole book is just fun.
Thank you
and so
so much.
you get to a heavy bogged down science part, and my brain is going, oh, it's math and science. It's math and science. Press through it. I want a sandwich. Let me go get a cup of coffee. But you know, it's a short enough, you know, math and science lesson that, you know, press through, and it's, you know, and then you're on to another funny story, and it just flowed well. So anyway, I know I'm giving you lots of compliments here, but I'll say something bad about you in a minute if I can think of it. But
Wonderful.
But I haven't yet. There's another thing I loved about this book. It's positive. It's all positive. Yeah. There is no bitching and complaining in this book.
Right.
And in addition to being positive, it's empowering. It's empowering, especially to young women. And I have 2 daughters. One is grown, and one is 11.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I know. And I'm married, and I just but thinking specifically about my daughters, it's kind of a lesson that you can be anything that you want to be, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And so this is a good book for young women especially to read, because I just think that even if they're not going in the engineering field, if they're thinking about, you know, being a professional of some sort,
sure.
then, you know, we all hit those times in our career paths where we say, or in life in general, where you've got those little voices in the back of your head, those little hobgoblins saying, you're not smart enough for this.
Right.
You're not personable enough for this.
Or what if your daughter wants to be a hockey player, and she's never seen any other women hockey players, which now there are women hockey players, but she might not know that you don't necessarily have to see someone who looks like you, who's the same ethnicity or gender as you doing something. There might be room for you to do it anyway. Just like patchwork some people together that you know, even if they're not exactly like you, and know that it's possible.
So here's my question. When you were writing this book, kind of what was the most important thing? Were you trying to write a funny book that had some personal stories and some math and science, or a math and science book that had some funny personal stories, or were you trying to write an empowering book that had the other two? I mean, what was kind of the driving focus?
I think the third. I know so many smart people, writers and artists, sort of in my non-engineering circle, who just didn't understand basic physics. And I had this feeling like, oh no, they're missing out. They're missing out on this beautiful laws of energy and laws of entropy that are just so almost, they're almost spiritual discussions, and they're so interesting. Yeah. And so here are these deep, intelligent people missing out on something that is so basic and so beautiful and so available to humanity. You know, we've got this incredibly designed or accidentally happened upon world, you know, make your decision, but they were missing out on some of this stuff. And so I wanted my friends, and I wanted people like that to be able to have a glimpse into that, because that's their birthright. It's your birthright as a human to look around and go, what exactly is going on here?
I love how you would take a science lesson and then turn it into a life lesson. There was one specific, I guess you were talking about vacuums maybe.
Yes.
Or maybe it was the chaos one, where you're talking about I think it was vacuums, where you're talking about if you leave a vacuum in your life, and this doesn't have anything to do with science, you know, if you leave an unfulfilled part of your life, something's going to fill it up.
That's right.
Something good or something bad.
That's right.
So it's almost like, all right, now here we go for the conspiracy theorists.
Okay.
Here's how we tie in speculative masonry into that. Speculative masonry has an operative and a speculative part, right? So we talk about tools of the building trade, but they have a moral lesson for us.
Yes.
Right, and that's exactly what you. So you were writing speculative masonry, you just didn't know it. Speculative science.
Oh, interesting.
Here's what's more. You ready?
And I'm in construction.
Yeah, I know.
This is so weird.
So you also write a lot about Newton, who was not a Mason. As far as we know, Newton was not a Freemason.
Okay.
However, he certainly ran in the circle and in the company of a ton of the ones that not only were speculative Freemasons, but our founding were at least around during the founding of and leading up to the founding of our first Grand Lodge. Because, so let's just talk about what was going on back. Can we talk about history a little bit? Are you
Yes.
Are you an amateur historian? You write about it an awful lot.
I was on the History Channel, so I...
Oh, well, does that make you make you a historian?
No, does not make me qualified as a historian. But I did a lot of reading to prep for those episodes.
Yeah.
So sort of became one, yes.
So here's something, though, that I was thinking about the whole time I was reading your book. I was thinking about this story. I'm going to tell a Freemason story. I'm going to take up some of your time.
Oh, no, do it.
Hey, I know we're interviewing Christine, but can I talk about us for 15 or 20 minutes?
I'm here to learn.
Okay. Let me run a theory by you, and then I'm
Okay.
going to give you some reaction time to it.
Okay.
You remember that disclaimer I did at the beginning where I said these are Ben's theories and not any?
Yes.
Everybody remember that when I do this now. All right, so when Francis Bacon came along, Mike Daniels was talking about this just the other night in the program. He really developed, or gets the credit for developing, the whole modern science, the whole scientific method.
Yep.
He was the dude that talked about the scientific method. He wrote the New Atlantis, and they had Solomon's house there, and so there all these. He's talking about a utopian place where what they came to call natural philosophers is what they called the Royal Society guys 50 years after Bacon or so, could postulate on science as much as they wanted. They could come up with any theory, and despite what the church said or despite what the state said, because at the time the church and state ruled all of science.
Right.
They said, here's what you're going to believe, and if you don't believe this, and if you get off the reservation as far as you're experimenting in the things that you're telling your scientific buddies, then you're going to be in a little bit of trouble, and you get called to the outhouse.
We're going to Galileo you.
Yes, or worse, or Bruno
Much
you.
worse, yeah.
Eduardo Bruno
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
So anyway, but things were lightening up over really from Henry VIII, and I don't want to get into a bogged down history lesson, but as the Catholic Church left England, and then Bacon and his crowd came along, the Stuart dynasty folks, James I came down from Scotland in 1603, and so the Stuarts were there, and then they had a setback. During Cromwell and the Puritans ruled for 9 years there in the mid-1600s. And then things got heavy-handed for those scientists again as far as church and state dictating what you could and could not learn. But they had already had a taste of it with Bacon, right?
Yep.
And so they formed what they called the Invisible College. So all these colleges whose curriculum was dictated by the church and state under the Puritans, and many on the continent the Catholics were doing the same thing, but they and I'm not against the church, but those were not good guys. Anyway, so they went underground.
Right.
But then when Charles II came back after the experiment with Puritanism, when he came back, he brought the Enlightenment back from the continent. And he immediately allowed those guys to form the Royal Society, and then they became the natural philosophers. And then all the chains were off,
Right.
and it was all experimentation, and it's all the dudes right? My wife is a retired science teacher, mostly biology, but she taught a lot of physical science too. So all these dudes. Like, I wrote them down so I didn't forget any of them. Let me throw you some names. See how many of these guys you know. Robert Boyle.
Boyle, as in Boyle's Law?
Boyle. Mm-hmm. Robert Moray, Elias Ashmole, Christopher Wren, Robert Hooke, John Locke, and...
Hooke's Law,
Yep.
spring,
Yep.
Boyle's Law, pressure.
and Desaguliers. So all of those guys, every one of them, Freemasons.
Oh, really?
Yep, and they were... they would have been around... 20 to 30, 40 years, 20, 30 years before our Grand Lodge was first formed. Here's another interesting thing about them is they became natural philosophers and formed the Royal Society and were doing all these experiments using this scientific method. They all had a history of being operative alchemists or astrologers. And so what was happening was, here's where my theory comes in, and here's where your book comes in. So we know that alchemy had a speculative and an operative part.
Yes.
And when they split, the operative part became modern-day chemistry,
Right.
and the speculative part became something else. And the astrologers and astronomers, which were one thing back prior to this,
Right.
but when you had to, conform to, what the way that they said it was supposed to be,
Yep.
as they began to, the change came off of that, those delved into an operative part and a speculative part. So I think that science lends itself very well to having an operative and a speculative part. Right after, as these guys were forming the Royal Society, a few years behind that came the official formation of speculative Freemasonry. Now, all these guys were speculative Freemasons. The official Grand Lodge system, as we know it, came about in 1717. But certainly for 100 years prior to that, the Invisible College guys, the Royal Society guys, were all Freemasons. Not all of them, but all of those guys were, and a ton of other ones. They were Freemasons. They had been operative alchemists and or astrologers, and they saw those things diverging, and right on the heels of that, we get operative and speculative Freemasonry that we have today. So I just think science sets itself up so well to have a speculative aspect to it, a philosophical aspect.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you captured in the book. You just didn't know you just didn't know that you were following in the footsteps of giants that lived 250 years ago.
I didn't know what
300 years
now
ago.
makes me
350
wonder.
years ago.
Is my stepdad was a Mason, the guy I described in there, Chuck. And we talked since I met him when I was 12 years old, I think, and he adopted me a little later. And we had these conversations. So I wonder if he was, as he was becoming a Mason too, when I was maybe 15 years old, he was having these conversations with me. And maybe I don't even know that basically I've sort of, in my own way, interpreted and sort of written out the message that I heard from him.
How interesting is that?
Isn't that strange?
So I bet when you were writing this book and you were coming up with this philosophical part of it at the end, I bet you didn't have to think, now, why would I do a philosophical part of this? I bet you just knew it intuitively.
No, sometimes I knew the philosophical part and I would have to go figure out sort of the operative part and remember, like, how does, what were the original goals of alchemy? Why did they think they could make gold from lead? And really look at the periodic table and make sure I remembered and understood that.
But most people don't think like that.
Oh, here's the thing. You're right. Most people don't think like that. But what I wanted this book to do and what I want us as a society to do is sort of cull through and make sure we grab those 7th, 8th graders, maybe even younger, the ones that are prone to think like that, and help them be great researchers and doctors and engineers and scientists, because I'm not sure our system is great at going through and finding them, and I think we're better at overlooking females, because if a girl says, I don't really like math or science, we'll go, yeah, that's okay, that's understood. If a boy says it, we might go, we really need you to step up. And so what if we told all kids, this is important, we really need you to step up? We might find more brilliance, and we might find more people who think like this.
Yes, true in every aspect of society.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. I'm glad that there are people, like us that are doing that. I wish more people would do it.
It makes me think of Chuck, my adoptive father, sitting at the kitchen table when he was becoming a Mason, and he had all these books around him, and he was also a diesel mechanic, so there was lots of stuff he always had to look up and think about, and he would be looking at steam cycles or just algebra, and I'd be thinking, like, why is he trying to learn algebra? But I think that was part of what he was doing as a Mason. And then eventually I passed him up in algebra, and then I would teach him how to solve the equations he was looking at. It was really funny. I was his math tutor.
That's very cool. You lived in Alaska for a little while. Tell us about that.
I did, yeah, until 8th grade. Alaska, it's funny, whenever I meet people from Alaska, we're all similar, it seems like. There's a similar, at least the ones that live in the lower 48 now, there's a sort of practical calmness to Alaskan people. I'm not sure why that is.
It's almost a frontier mentality.
Yes, for sure, yeah. In that, as long as you'll do your part and help out your neighbor and jump their car when it freezes, you're okay, and they won't mess with you. There's this in Alaska, it feels like there's not as much of a luxury of being picky. It's like you need to be friends with your neighbors. It's important.
Do you miss it?
I do. I didn't think I did, and then I went back with History Channel, and I felt really emotional about being there. You know, I felt like, oh, this is what the world is supposed to look like. It's supposed to be this sort of jagged and snowy and colorful, and it's just so gorgeous. I forgot how pretty it is and how
Big.
I lived the rest of my life thinking, well, this doesn't look so good, because I know what Alaska looks like.
Yeah. You forget how big this country is until
Yes.
you get out in it. In the western part of the United States, and Alaska is like that on crack. I mean, it's just,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
When you get out in Alaska, you know, you're out. I mean,
Yeah.
there's places in Alaska you go that you can't hear a dog bark, you can't see a light,
Yeah.
there is nothing but the occasional airplane,
Right.
and not even many of those. And
The occasional
up in-
airplane crashing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we were there investigating the disappearance of people in Alaska, and they were talking about this triangle in Alaska where all these people disappear, and I had to almost say nothing throughout that whole episode. I got a little bit of trouble with the director. He said, you know, you're killing this episode, but I put the triangle over a map of Alaska and said, that's the only place people live. Of course, it's the only place they're going to die.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, Alaska has like 500,000 people.
Yeah.
And 300,000 of them live in the whole Anchorage, Matsu Valley, that area. There's just short of when I was there's just short of 100,000 in Fairbanks. That left 100,000 for the rest of the state, which is as big as a third of the continental United States.
Right.
It's huge.
Yeah.
They have the highest per capita pilot ratio.
Oh, yeah.
People, tons of little small planes. There's people that fly up there that don't have a pilot's license.
That's right.
I mean, things that, you know, there's a lot of shows on Alaska now.
Yeah, I know.
And so
I've
all
noticed
this,
that.
so all this stuff that, you know, was like not a secret, but I mean, it was just a way of life that, a memory that I had. You know, Super Cubs with duct tape all over them, and those big Tundra tires, and you know, the salmon running. It's just it's crazy.
The people from lower 48 coming up to have a nature experience.
Yeah.
So we used to joke, and this is a terrible joke, and I apologize in advance, but we could tell where the Californians had visited because you'd see like a driver's license and a little bit of their clothes and some bear tracks, you know. Like that was it. You know, like you're going hiking without a gun? Wow. Well, give me your mom's phone number so I can let her know. You know, like it's crazy.
Yeah. Put little bells on your day pack, so you
the bells are to show the bears where you are so they can wait till they're hungry and eat you.
Did you watch the Iditarod a lot when you were up there?
I watched some dog sled races, but I don't know if I ever saw any of the Iditarod.
Yeah, we had the Yukon Quest in Fairbanks where I was at, which is longer than the Iditarod and colder.
Oh wow! And more women win it.
Well, they were winning a pretty Dee Dee Genre and
women were doing really well in the Iditarod because it's not a test of brute strength. It's a test of survival, and it's a test of your relationship with your animals.
Right.
And so
that's exactly right. I missed it. It's the only recurring dream that I have. I dream about being back in Alaska all the time.
Oh really?
Yeah, and I haven't been back since I left. I left in '92. We're way off subject here, so.
Have your girls been to Alaska?
Nah,
Oh, they gotta go.
no.
Yeah.
My oldest son was born there, but no, they haven't been. I would love to go back.
Yeah.
I'd love to go and live. If we hit the lottery, I'm shutting down
Really?
my business tomorrow, and
Really?
I'll see you Freemasons. I'll catch y'all on the flip side. I'm
Are there
going to
Masons
Alaska.
in Anchorage?
Oh yeah, yeah,
Oh, I don't remember knowing about that.
yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, I met a bunch.
They're
of them.
everywhere.
They're everywhere, under every rock, behind every door. They're lurking. There's like 12 of them right back here, hiding behind that altar, right there, ready to pop up at
dangerous.
any minute. All right, so rumor has it that you're writing another book.
I am.
But somehow, between engineering and being on TV and singing and traveling to the Freemasons, tell us about the new book.
The new book, the theme is engineering specifically and learning. So this one, I was in high school learning physics in a Catholic school, and I'm not Catholic, so that's sort of the running joke, as you know. And then the next one is about me being in college, Cal Poly, learning engineering and becoming, despite my best efforts not to become an engineer, really becoming one mentally.
So flesh that out a little bit.
Well, I declared mechanical engineering as my major because my dad asked me what kind of engineering I wanted to study in college. Gave me sort of a false choice because I loved physics and he really wanted me to be able to support myself. So he encouraged me to study mechanical engineering, and it was hard. Like the first year, I thought I'm not going to be able to get through this, but just kept talking to him. And if I had questions about specific questions about how engine cycles or anything, I could call him and get some information. So I got my way through engineering school, but right around junior year, I thought, I'm never really going to be an engineer. I don't think I want to do this, but I wanted to be in a band, and I was in a band, and the band was doing okay, and I was playing bass and writing, and I decided to get an English minor, but I stuck with engineering because there was enough about it. Like every now and then I'd come across a series of classes that I just loved, like thermodynamics I loved, fluids I loved, didn't love the strength of materials, but then there'd be a heat transfer class, and it would just feel like magic, like this thing that I could now trade on, this thing that I knew that not a lot of other people knew. And I wanted to make my dad proud, so I got the degree, but I was, by senior year, I was a very unlikely looking engineering student. I'll have to include a picture in the book. I had giant white bleached hair, and I wore black trench coat with a little mini skirt and cutoff boots, because I was in a band. I mean, that's mostly what I did, was play music. And so I'd sort of cruise into class and sit in the front row, just because I didn't want to notice that I was the only woman in the class. But it wasn't that I stood out because I was the only woman. I also stood out because I looked like I looked like I was in a flock of seagulls or something. It was I looked pretty different.
Did your classmates like that or not like that?
I don't know. I didn't hang out with them, and I didn't. They
Really?
didn't. Yeah, I would run in. Sometimes a guy would be at a gig or something, and he would say, I swear to God, I've seen you in some of my classes. He was wondering what the bass player was doing in his class, but I wouldn't ever recognize the fellow because I sat with my back to them, because it was between me and the professor. I learned that about sophomore year, that I did better in a class if I went in, sat right in the front row, and looked that teacher in the eye, and made sure that I understood what he or she was saying. Because once I could
Wise
get
words.
that, then I didn't care what was going on behind me. I know. It was quite a journey. And then I graduated and thought, okay, I don't really need to be an engineer. I can go do whatever I want. And I did for many years. I ignored the engineering part. I thought I was ignoring it, but really I was operating in my life as a very logical engineer.
But don't y'all have to do, not clinical time, what do you, an internship?
No, we don't have to. So I did a 4-year degree only. There's a specific exam. It's called engineering training in California. It might be called fundamentals of engineering here. You take it and you must pass that in order to get a professional engineering license later. So I took that my junior year, passed it, because it was all the stuff we were studying anyway, and got out with my degree and that in hand, and then kind of ignored engineering for a while. But when I got back into it, I had enough experience to go sit for the professional engineering license exam, and got that later.
All right, so you were out of engineering for a while.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you decided to get back in it.
Yeah.
I mean, were you, after you've been out of something for a while, it seems a little intimidating just to jump right back in it.
Yeah, it was.
Did it scare you?
A little bit, yeah, but I needed the money, and I also wanted to, I wanted to be an adult. I wanted to buy a house. I wanted to have a car that consistently ran. I was tired of pushing my car and jump starting it every morning.
So you just hung out a shingle? And
I applied for a job in the paper. Yeah, and I took a really low hourly rate. And
working for another firm.
Working for another firm.
I see.
Yep.
And so now you've gone out on your own though.
Now I went out on my own about 6 months ago.
Well, good.
Yeah.
And business is good.
Business is really good.
Thrilled for you, girl.
Yeah.
We're really
Thank
happy
you.
for you.
Thanks.
Fixing to run it up out of here, Brown. You ready? I'm ready. Christine, thank you so much. Why did you choose to come here? Why? Let me tell you what's going on here.
Interesting.
So Christine is, just so y'all know, you also, in addition to all these other things, you're on the speaking tour.
Yes.
And you have an agent.
I do.
And if you go to her website, which is?
Jody Solomon Bureau?
No,
my
your
website. Oh, sorry.
There's a link from your website, because I've been cyber stalking you,
ChristineMcKinley.com.
ChristineMcKinley.com. Then there's a link to your agent.
Yes.
And they can get you to come speak. Where I'm sure
Yes.
she pulls down a lot of money to come speak to people. And we're giving her like gas money and some chewing gum and some liquor tonight. So, you're here doing this pretty much pro bono.
Yes.
Why did you choose to do that?
Because my dad was a Mason.
Wow.
And I think that whatever was instilled in him was passed on to me, and I do feel like I was informed by Masonry in some way.
I think you were too.
Yeah.
Good. Well, you will get your reward in heaven for the most part, but we really appreciate you coming to speak to Sophia Lodge tonight. I appreciate you coming to do the podcast. And the next time you're in North Carolina, we'll cook for you, and we'll have a good time at
Excellent.
Bowel. Thank you so much for taking your time with us, young lady.
you.
Will you sign my book?
Yes, absolutely.
There you go. Riley normally does this lead out, and he has a lot of really profound things that he says, but since I don't know what they are, I'm just going to go with always love the folks around you, because you never know when they're going to be gone. So practice love and tolerance, and you'll never be on the wrong side of things. Thank you, Brad.